Welcome to the Business Forum Show here on Northwest Digital News. We have Adam Walschlager joining us from Action Coach out of the great state of Minnesota, and Kevin Hunter here at the broadcast desk in Washington. Well, we're not going to waste any time talking about this subject today, Adam, because time is of the essence. And we're going to talk about the importance of time and how people are using time. So you have a great time quadrant, which will pop up here on the back screen for everybody to see. And let's kind of walk through the quadrants. First of all, explain what people are looking at, and then let's get into some of the brass tacks on good time management.
Sure. So, essentially the quadrant, the grid you're looking at, everything that you can do on a given day essentially fits into one of those categories. So you start off with the top two, quadrant 1 and 2, and those are the things that are important, right? So bottom being ones that aren't important. And then at the top, you have things that are urgent and not urgent. So as far as an activity, you could break down your day and look at what you have to do and then quickly pop them into the different categories to at least get an idea of what you're doing and if it's important or not, and if it's urgent or not.
Mm-hmm. I'm just looking at how you have this set up. And first of all, this is a great thing because I'm looking at your two categories, quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. And in my opinion, and the professional people that I have been around and seeing, I see a lot of people spending a great deal of time in quadrant 3, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
Correct. You're right. I mean, to cut to the chase, you want to be spending more of your time in quadrant 2. But like you said, if you look at most people, they find themselves spending a lot of time in 1 and 3. And if you get someone that is always running in crisis management, everything's important and urgent all the time, they're going to be so burnt out from running that way that the only free time they have, they're going to pick quadrant 4 activities. Just vegging on the couch, making useless phone calls, being on Facebook, essentially time wasters. Because it's just all the energy they have left.
So let's talk about how does the person who wants to do a better job of managing their time, how do they use this quadrant to develop better time management in their weekly schedule?
Yeah, so I'll start off with quadrant 3, right? Most people, they start a business, they get it up and running, and they're essentially running their business on other people's schedule, right? So when you get up in the morning, you check your email, your social media, your phone, you're already starting off by saying, okay, what do I need to do today? And it's ultimately on other people's schedules. So you're reacting, right? You're not proactive about how you want to spend your day. And you'll see it really quickly when you talk to a business owner and tell them how they can start freeing up their time. You'll find the sticking points really quickly. So if it's, hey, you need to not be on your email, you need to not be answering the phone so much. It's, oh, but everyone wants to talk to me. I'm the most important person. I can't not do that. You'll hear that a lot. So you get to the pain points very quickly. As far as how you would start rearranging your day, it's being proactive, right? It's doing the things in quadrant 2. The best point on this quadrant that I've ever heard is if you ask someone what's one thing that they could do in their personal life and one thing that they can do in their professional life that would dramatically change and give them dramatic results, it's almost always something that's going to be in quadrant 2. So if you want to have a healthy body, right, you're going to start exercising. Well, if you miss a workout, no big deal. It's not that urgent, but it is important. Right. So if you wanted to be better at work, you're going to start doing what we have coming up. We have a 90-day strategic planning for all our businesses. You would not believe the amount of people that say, hey, Adam, I can't believe you're taking us out of our business for a whole day, a whole half a day.
Yeah.
And it's, where do you start with that? If you can't take yourself out of your business for a half a day to plan the next 90 days, think how much time you're wasting by running around like a chicken with its head cut off.
Ultimately, you want to be able to be gone from your business for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month without anything going sideways.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, a great way to think of it, I just heard Dave say this the other day, the more you're needed and involved in your business, the less valuable your business is. The less you're needed and the more time you can be away, the more valuable your business is. Because if someone wants to buy it, but you need to be involved in it every day, it's not worth anything. Right? If they're going to be gone, it's not worth anything. You want it running by itself.
Investors are not looking for a job, which if everything around the organization is critical on you, the owner, being a part of everything, well, anybody investing or buying that company is also going to get a job along with it, and that's not necessarily what they want. So 100% agree with that.
Exactly. So, and you asked a good question. It's like, okay, walk me through these quadrants. I think a lot of people, the first aha is when they look at the things that they have to do on their day. They, everyone does their time management different. They might have a checklist, they might have a calendar. But if you take a look at what your activities are and see where they fit, you're very quickly able to see what's important, what's not important, right? You thought these things that were super important really aren't that important. That's the first aha. But when we're really trying to become more productive, if we start spending more and more time in that quadrant two, the other thing that happens is the quadrant one stuff starts to shrink.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't get away from crises. A business owner calls and, the basement's flooding in their office, or they lose, this happens all the time. They lose a key employee. Well, if you're prepared and you're not, running by the seat of your pants all the time, you're able to effectively handle those true crisis issues because you've been proactive about everything else. If you're running everything important and urgent, you're never going to be prepared when those times come up. So that was the big one for me. It's, hey, not only am I getting to do these important things, but now that quadrant one is going to be squeezed down to very, very little, and you can run much more peacefully and prepared.
I also think about, the good planning processes. Maybe this isn't a great example, but I think about a farmer who has an area in which his cattle are fenced in. And if that's the only fence he has on his entire property, and if that fence goes down, that could be a really big problem for him, because now his cows are in the next county. But if he has his farm set up in a fashion in which there's multiple stages of fences, if somebody goes through the first fence, we can say, well, that's bad. I got to go fix the fence, get them back to where they need to be. But they can't go very far because of my plan B, my plan C. And I think about businesses and how often do people really think beyond that first step or that second step or that third step. They're not thinking very, very far when planning isn't a part of what they're doing. And when they are waking up every morning and looking at their email or their phone or their voicemail and going, what do I got to do today? I think about, even in my own life, and as my understanding of this quadrant, as I've put more and more of my own time into quadrant two, there's two things that I'd say about this. Number one, I'm a heck of a lot happier person. that was a given that came along with it. And a big part of the reason is that my stress level is extremely low. And yes. I was having a conversation with somebody who is going through a bunch of fires burning in their organization. It wasn't even a business, but just a leader responsible for a large organization. And one of the things I shared with them is, you're going to find that if the things you're working on are not making you happy, are not reducing your stress, you're probably working on the wrong things regularly. And as it turned out, his box was completely full in quadrant number one. Just yep. Amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of course, we can look at other people's schedules and really quickly figure out what's not important. It's very difficult to do for yourself because everything is so close. We talk about being close and big means that it's really overwhelming. But when we look at other people's stuff, it looks small and far away. So it's much more easy to process those things. The example I like to give to people when they start talking to me about how busy they are and how crazy it is and how they're not able to get ahead, I say things like, hey, Bill Gates seems to have it kind of figured out. And his life is probably a little bit busier than yours, a little bit more stressful. But you and your, $500,000 business, your $1 million business are having a really hard time, right? We all have the same hours in a day. So if you want to get better and kind of scale up as a person or a business, the only thing you can do is more effectively use your time, right? So those things at the bottom, the non-important ones, those are the ones you want to try to cut out more and more. So taking a look at quadrant three, you'll see that at the bottom it says the yes man, right? It's the person that no matter what they're asked, they always say yes. And we talked about the DISC personality. This might be an S-type personality, right? Where whatever's needed, they'll say yes. The problem is every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, right? And that's the biggest thing is when someone asks us to have a coffee or a meeting, or like you said, set up that social media thing. If you say yes, that's fine. But now you're saying no to your spouse, your kids, your job, your exercise, your sleep. You're saying no to something else. So on that point, I think what most people do is they wake up, they write down a list of the things they have to do, and then they figure out some way to prioritize. But you have to at least take into account the week ahead, right? Because if I look at what's important today, I can guarantee you the 30-minute exercise I need to do, or the 30 minutes preparing for a speech or a workshop I'm getting, does not rank very high in the priority. But once we get to the last day of the week and that speech or presentation or whatever is due, all of a sudden it becomes a quadrant one activity very quickly, right? So we have to take today and the next week into consideration, look what all needs to be done. And then maybe it is that 30-minute exercise becomes much more important, right? Because I'm going to get out of shape and have no energy to be able to continue to move forward.
So somebody who's struggling with how to manage time in each of these quadrants, you have a recommendation on how somebody could use this, take a 1-week assignment, use the quadrant, and figure out where maybe they're wasting their time. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, the probably the common one that some people have heard of is doing a time study, time diary. So a lot of times when a business owner, for example, says they just don't have enough time, we'll say, okay, great. The first thing we're going to do is kind of track your time this week and see what you actually are doing. And almost every single time, the person will come back a week later if they've actually done the exercise and the activity, and they will find at least one thing that they were wasting a lot of time on, right? So it might be, I was watching an hour of Netflix. For me, right, when I had my own business, my whole way of doing business was having coffee and networking around town. Well, I realized that having a coffee appointment at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 and 3 at each corner of the Twin Cities was not a very effective use of my time, but I thought I was super productive, super burnt out, right, driving all over town. So now I realize, okay, hey, let's pick a neutral city and let's line them up 9, 10, 11, and 12 back to back. Oh my gosh, I just got a half a day of time, right? So there's lots of little tips and tricks you can do, but not until you actually have the data to look at. Right now, all of a sudden it gets a little bit easier. The other thing that I would say is what gets scheduled gets done. So it's one thing to write a list and think, okay, well, this is all the stuff I need to do, but we don't actually take it and schedule it, right? We just think, oh, I have I'm notorious for this, is I got the whole weekend, right? I'll get that done. All of a sudden it's Sunday night and you're like, where did the time go, right? How did that happen? So what we like to do is teach people to come up with a list, prioritize, for example, the things they need to do, look where they fit in these quadrants, and then actually put them in a schedule. Block them, 9 to 10 on Sunday morning or whatever that time is going to be. And then actually, if it's a recurring thing, so every let's say Friday at 2 p.m. from 2 to 3, I'm going to do my social media strategy, right? So you can even go into the notes of that activity and say, well, this hour for this week, I'm going to work on 1, 2, and 3.
All great stuff. And anybody who's struggling with time management, you think about all the different things that are of value to you in your life, and there isn't anything that you can put a higher premium on than simply time. And recommend that anybody take some of this advice into consideration, because even the best people, this particular quadrant, I really appreciate that you took the time to lay it out in this fashion, because this really makes a ton of sense. And I hope people are taking some notes on this, because just by default, in some respects, and thinking about my own personal time, I have made the choice to not get myself involved in things that are taking away from where I really want to be spending my time in my life, including my time that I want to spend with my family. So I've done a number of these things simply to reduce my stress and increase my reward in life, not just in terms of happiness, but financially, because when you're spending more time on planning and building and that sort of thing, the result changes as well. And so those are all great things, but I hope people really take this into consideration and go through the exercise, do some time management. And for anybody who wants to reach out to Adam or Dave or Tracy, the whole team there at Action Coach, you can find them at businesscoachmn.com. The website we'll put also on the stream here for everybody to access. Appreciate, Adam, you taking time out of your busy schedule to share with people how to do a better job of managing time, an essential lesson here on the Business Forum Show. I'm Kevin Hunter with Adam Walschlager on the Business Forum Show here on Northwest Digital News. Thanks, everyone who joined us. This concludes today's live programming on Northwest Digital News. Thanks for joining us for this special broadcast. Heard around the world in more than 70 countries on YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Facebook, and Twitch TV. If you enjoyed a story or guest we had here on Northwest Digital News and would like to strut your stuff on the broadcast, email us today at wainfo2017@gmail.com or call or text to 360-545-3501. We're always interested in unique stories, topics, and guests to share with our worldwide audience. Before you go, don't forget to give us a big thumbs up and comment on the live stream. And for those of you who'd like to financially support the broadcast, you can do so at patreon.com/Northwest Digital News. We thank you for your patronage. On behalf of Chris Bornstead, Kyle Torgeson, Stephanie Hunter, and all the people that made this broadcast possible, I'm Kevin Hunter. Till next time, take care.